Hi, I want to tell you a little bit about what I do and my job and where I live. And I live in a very small community, 9/10 of a square mile, called Hawaiian Gardens. It's located in LA County, and it's an amazing city. And there are so many people. It's very community. There's close families. I remember when I first moved here, everybody around us was related. I remember the cousins lived in the back house, the other cousins lived in the front house, and across the street was uncle and aunt, and grandma lived next door. It was just such a family environment. I remember my little son Ryan saying to me one day, "Mom, can I go to my cousin's house?" And I said, "No, your cousins live a long way." He goes, "No, they just live across the street." He felt like this was his home too. It's a very close community. It's mostly Latino. It's 9/10 of a square mile, like I said, and there's probably about 18,000 people in this small community. We began here 28 years ago. My husband and I felt called by the Lord to come to this community and share our faith with people and to reach the needs of the community. We began, and it all started actually before he was even my husband. We used to go to Mexicali every year and go and share with the people in Mexico. And one year we were headed out planning our trip to Mexico, and we looked at the community that bordered our church. And as we were walking out, we saw a lot of Latino kids running around and families in small homes, and we started saying, why are we going to Mexico? We haven't even reached our own backyard. So we began an outreach to Hawaiian Gardens, and we had about probably 60, 70 kids come in the doors, and I met a city. I met an entire community, and through that we decided to reach the city. We met two little kids, Michael and Rachel, and they have a lot to do with why we had our heart. Their mom was raised, she had 8 children, and Michael and Rachel were the youngest, and she struggled with some chemical dependency, and it was hard for her to raise her kids here in the city, and we began to take Michael and Rachel kind of under our wing and spend time with them. We spent a lot of time, and eventually after a while we started feeling like, it was hard. Our church wasn't really backing us. We didn't know how to start a ministry. So what we did instead, we got on a ship and we sailed away from the city where we really felt God had called us to. But I think God had a lot of training for us to learn. So we went on a ship called the Anastasis, 522 feet long, I believe, yards long. I don't remember. I used to have to quote it and say it all the time. But it was a mercy ship. And on that mercy ship, we collected supplies in Los Angeles, and we went on to Guatemala, where we delivered supplies and spent time with kids. And it was a great time and a wonderful experience. Then went on from Guatemala to New Zealand, and eventually God brought us back to Hawaiian Gardens. Rachel especially became a big part of our life. And while she was in our life, we even took her in as our own. She lived with us for nearly a year. And eventually she felt kind of, I think, guilty and wanted to go back and be with her sister and her mother. And so she left us. And it was a miracle that what happened when she left us was that I was pregnant with my son. And so at her loss, we ended up having our first child.